This is Under Review, the show that talks about Colorado sports with a sprinkling of national sports stories as well. I'm Jordan Long. The Heisman Trophy has announced their 2022 Heisman finalists as the award is going to be presented tomorrow in New York City. Now, all these finalists are actually quarterbacks. Those are USC's Caleb Williams, Ohio State's C.J. Stroud, TCU's Max Duggan, and Georgia's Stetson Bennett. Let's take a look at all of their seasons, starting with Caleb Williams. Williams led USC to a record of 11-2. Pretty impressive. His numbers are pretty good too, as he completed 66.1% of his passes for 37 touchdowns. He totaled 4,075 passing yards. Very impressive, and he was finding his open receivers and not forcing the ball into coverage with 4 interceptions. Williams, though, he didn't really run the football, but mostly it was quarterback draws, as he had 372 rushing yards and ran for 10 touchdowns. His worst game of the season came last week against Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. Williams had 363 passing yards, which is pretty good, and he had 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. You're going, well, why is that bad numbers? Well, look at his offensive line. They did not protect him, as he was sacked 7 times. But still, Caleb Williams should be a Heisman finalist. Now, C.J. Stroud ended up completing 66.2% of his passes and had 37 touchdowns, but he threw more picks than Caleb Williams at 6. And honestly, though, his passing yards are less at 3,340 yards. But Ohio State is in the college football playoff. Now, Max Duggan is also a quarterback in the college football playoff with TCU. Duggan ended up completing 64.5% of his passes. Now, for the total for Duggan, he had 3,321 passing yards and had 30 touchdowns, but only 4 interceptions. Now, last week, he struggled in the Big 12 championship game against Kansas State. We'll get there in a minute. As for Max Duggan, he was more of a threat to run the football with 404 rush yards and 6 touchdowns. So last week in the Big 12 championship game, he actually helped TCU go into overtime, but they lost 31-28. Now, Duggan was not very good in the passing game. 18 of 36 passing, right at 50%. You want that percentage to be 60% or even better, 65%. But the fact of the matter is, he only had 50% of his passes completed. Not exactly what you want to see from a Heisman finalist. In that game, though, he had 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Now, that could have cost him the Heisman Trophy. Finally, Stetson Bennett led Georgia to an undefeated season, which is pretty impressive in the SEC. They are the number 1 team in the college football playoff. Now, Bennett passed for 3,425 yards and 20 touchdowns. He also had 6 interceptions. His completion percentage is pretty good at 68.1%. He also added 7 rushing touchdowns. Pretty good. So if you look at the Heisman Trophy finalists, they are all deserving. Those are Caleb Williams, C.J. Stroud, Max Duggan, and Stetson Bennett. The thing is, though, you couldn't go wrong with any of them, but in my mind, it really should be Caleb Williams who wins this trophy. But really, to be nominated is pretty good, since you are nominated as the best player in college football this year. But again, in my mind, Caleb Williams should be hoisting that trophy tomorrow night. Look at what he did. He passed for 4,075 yards, which are the most of the 4 finalists. I mean, 4,075 yards in a season, that is NFL material, and he's probably going to go into the NFL soon. But if you look at it, he did end up losing the Pac-12 championship game and struggled, but it still doesn't matter. The guy, that is Caleb Williams, showed he was the best player in college football. The Heisman Trophy winner will be announced tomorrow night. You can watch it on ESPN starting at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. The winner will go down as one of the best ever to play college football for a single season, and there's not many of those. We're going to move on to the Denver Broncos. We all know that the Denver Broncos season hasn't really gone the way the Broncos thought it would, or fans thought it would. I mean, look at what their record is. They're 3-9. Well, they face Kansas City. Kansas City is 9-3. If you really look at it, before the regular season was announced, this was actually supposed to be a Sunday night matchup of two really good quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes versus Russell Wilson, except for one problem. Russell Wilson has struggled, and the Broncos are 3-9, so they decided to actually flex that game out to a Sunday afternoon game. So if you look at this series, though, it has been pretty lopsided since 2015. Denver has lost 3 straight to Kansas City. Kansas City has owned the Denver Broncos. The only game in the last 7 years that Denver won was in week 2 of the 2015 season. That was the year that the Broncos won Super Bowl 50. The thing about that week 2 matchup was it really should have gone to overtime. Here's why I say that. Denver tied the game with 36 seconds left. Kansas City got the ball back. Most teams would say, hey, let's kneel it and take our chances in overtime. Unfortunately, that didn't happen as Kansas City tried to gain some yards on the ground and maybe have a chance to, hey, let's throw a couple of passes deep. Well, their running back Jamal Charles fumbled, and Bradley Roby picked it up and ran it all the way back for a go-ahead touchdown to give Denver the 31-24 lead with 27 seconds left. That was it. That's the last win, and it came in Kansas City. That was the last time the Broncos actually beat Kansas City. Now, if you look at the last 13 matchups for Denver against Kansas City, 6 of them were one-possession games. Of course, Denver couldn't close the door. The one that was the closest was in Week 12, and that was a 30-27 loss in Week 12 in 2016. That was almost a tie, though, but Kansas City came out with the victory. Otherwise, Denver has been blown out in this series, and it hasn't been close. Well, if you look at Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City's quarterback, he has never lost to Denver. It doesn't feel like this week will be the week that Denver says, hey, we're going to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. The way they're going to win this football game, though, is they have a top 5 defense. That is how they're going to stay in this game. They don't allow teams to gain many yards, giving up 304.6 yards per game, 3rd in the NFL. Of course, teams want to be successful in the passing game, but if you look at Denver, they do not give up many yards to opponents. They permit 184.5 yards per game through the air, 3rd in the NFL. The way, though, Kansas City can beat the Denver Broncos is running the football. Denver struggles. They give up 120.1 yards per game on the ground, 19th in the NFL. If you really look at Kansas City, they are a high-powered offense who wants to score. Well, guess what? The Broncos defense doesn't allow teams to score as they permit 17 points per game, 2nd in the league. Now, if you look at Kansas City, they are tough to beat because of their offense. Remember, they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Patrick Mahomes. The guy has tossed for 3,808 yards so far this year and 30 touchdowns. The best part of his game, though, is he doesn't turn the ball over with just 8 interceptions. He has great vision, and he won't force the ball into coverage. The thing about Kansas City, though, they are a passing team. That's how they're going to be successful. Sure, Patrick Mahomes can be a pocket passer, but he will run outside the pocket to buy more time. The Broncos can't allow him to do that. Force Patrick Mahomes to stay in the pocket. Kansas City, though, what makes them difficult is they can actually pass the football. Of course, it helps that you have Patrick Mahomes. They are the number 1 ranked offense in terms of passing yards throwing for 306.5 yards per game. Pretty impressive. So, how can the Denver Broncos prevent him from getting out of the pocket? Really, it comes down, can you spy him? And you have to do that with Alex Singleton or Josie Jewell. I know those aren't fast running back, or I should say fast linebackers, but it's a way for him to stay in the pocket. Even so, Denver must have coverage on their wide receivers. There's only one main target in terms of wide receivers that Patrick Mahomes looks for. There's only one receiver, and that's Juju Smith-Schuster. There's an even bigger target that Denver has to watch out for, and you know who I'm talking about. That is their tight end, Travis Kelce. The thing about Kelce is he's a nightmare in terms of matchup. He's a matchup nightmare, and it's hard to cover him. He is too fast for a linebacker to be on him, and his size of 6'5" allows him to outjump defensive backs to catch the football. What do I need to see from the Denver defense on passing plays is don't allow Travis Kelce to beat you. Find a way to have coverage on him and force Patrick Mahomes to pass to somebody else. I get Kelce is a gifted tight end, but if he has over, I'm going to say 60 to 80 yards, Denver's in trouble. Of course, you can't allow Travis Kelce to have 100 plus, but 60 to 80 is still pretty bad. The Broncos defense is in trouble if Kelce goes off. Looking at the Broncos offense, we know how much they struggle. In this game, though, you have to be able to run the football with Latavius Murray and Mike Boone. If you do that, that will keep the clock going to control the clock, and it will actually shorten the game for the Denver Broncos. It may also open up the passing game for Russell Wilson. The key is, though, is to pass block. Give Russell Wilson time to throw the football. If not, Wilson will be running for his life, and he will miss throws. That could be incompletions, and of course, the worst case scenario, those are interceptions. As for the Broncos offense, third downs are going to be very key in this game. They have to convert and can't have 3 and outs. I don't want short drives. That has happened way too many times this year. The problem is the Broncos are one of the worst teams in terms of converting third downs on offense. This stat is completely bad, and this shows why the Broncos offense is struggling. They convert third downs at 27.38%, last in the NFL. If Denver can drive down the field on this tough Kansas City defense, touchdowns are a must. You can't settle for field goals. But even with the Denver Broncos offense, that is still tough to do because they only put up 13.8 points per game. 13.8 points per game. Denver should be able to score, but we know how hard that has been. The Kansas City defense, though, does allow teams to score. They allow 22.5 points per game. The problem is, even when Denver drives into the red zone, they do not score touchdowns. In fact, in terms of scoring touchdowns in the red zone, they stand at 37.5%. I don't like that number because it's dead last in the NFL. The only area where Denver may be able to win this football game is on the leg of punter Corliss Waitman. He must be able to place punts inside the 20, forcing long fields for Kansas City. If those are short punts and Kansas City receives the ball near their own 40, which almost happened last week against the Baltimore Ravens because he was not booming them inside the 20. But if you give Kansas City a short field at the 40, that is not good, especially their own 40, because they can march right down the field into scoring range for even a field goal. The other thing I look at for this game, is penalties. We know how much penalties can kill the Denver Broncos. They are a very undisciplined team, and that goes back to coaching. A penalty on offense will kill your drive against Kansas City, and a penalty on defense will keep Kansas City's drive alive. Denver can have silly penalties. I know flags are going to happen, but you can't have too many of them. In fact, the Broncos are the number one team in terms of penalties. They lead the league with 91 penalties for 787 yards. They really can't do that against Kansas City because the Chiefs will make you pay. The Broncos know this is a tough task, and it may be a long game if the Broncos offense doesn't do anything and it's a lot of 3 and outs. That puts a lot of pressure on the defense to stop Kansas City, and really and truly, they may get tired out. The offense must put points on the board and at least control the clock somewhat. Let your defense rest. Now, kickoff is at 2:05 Mountain Time this Sunday. Denver will face Kansas City again in Week 17, but that will be in Arrowhead Stadium. Denver really has 2 chances to end their skid against Kansas City. Remember, it's at 13. If they lose on Sunday, that's 14. And if they lose in Week 17, that is 15. So you don't want to reach it, make the streak reach 15, because then you'll have to wait a whole year to try to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, it will extend to next season if they do not win. That is the Denver Broncos. And who knows when this skid will end by Denver, or snapped, I should say. If Denver ends, and really it's a terrible loss, you have to wonder, when do they fire Nathaniel Hackett? It could be another bad loss and Hackett will be gone. But you know what? We will have to wait and see. On to my NFL picks of the week. Last week I went 4-1, and overall this year I am 44-21. I'm actually pretty good in my picks, which is great. But we will start with the Miami Dolphins versus the LA Chargers. The Chargers are a 3.5-point favorite. I told you before that the Broncos game against Kansas City was flexed. Well, it got flexed for this game. This game will be on Sunday night. It was originally scheduled for Sunday afternoon, but the Broncos will play the Chiefs then. So this is the Sunday night game. Miami is tough to play against because of their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. He is such a mobile quarterback that he can run with the football and pass it as well. If you are the LA Chargers, find a way to spy Tua Tagovailoa and force him to pass. Can't let him get outside the pocket. If he does, that means Tua Tagovailoa can run with the football. For the Chargers, make Tua Tagovailoa stay in the pocket. For the Chargers, though, I look at quarterback Justin Herbert. He is a pretty good quarterback, and he uses all of his receivers. For the Miami Dolphins, I should say, find a way to stop the passing game. They will actually run it, though. That is the Chargers. Will run it with Austin Eckler, even if the passing game isn't working, because Austin Eckler opens up the passing game. In the end, though, this is a game of who can keep drives alive on third downs, and that will be the LA Chargers. The New York Jets versus the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo is a 9.5-point favorite. Mike White, quarterback of the New York Jets, didn't look so great against the Vikings last week, and that was a stout Vikings defense, and he was picked off twice. Well, the Bills defense is much better. They are going to bring pressure. That line, the offensive line, must give Mike White time to throw the football. When he throws it, place it where a receiver can catch it. White cannot throw it into coverage because those will be picked off, and White must find his receivers early and often. If he can move the chains, that will be key. So you're looking at first downs and keep drives alive if you're Mike White. When the Jets drive into the red zone, though, score touchdowns. Do not settle for field goals. The Bills have one of the best offenses in the league, starting with MVP candidate. Yes, I said it. MVP candidate, Josh Allen. He is so tough to play against because he throws the football so fast and has a quick release. You can't blitz him because he will beat you with that quick release. I look at this game as, can the Jets keep pace with the Bills? That is the Jets offense. Can they keep pace with the Bills offense? I don't think they can, as the Bills roll in this football game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco is a 3.5-point favorite. Tampa Bay is so tough to beat because of their quarterback and defense. Tom Brady has such a quick release, so it's hard to bring him down. Brady will look for Mike Evans, Julio Jones, and Chris Godwin. The 49ers, though, cannot bring pressure on defense. Why? Brady will beat you. If I look at the 49ers offense, it's really on the legs of Christian McCaffrey because he is key to their offense. Run the ball, and that will take pressure off of Brock Purdy to use his arm. So even with Purdy using his arm, find Deebo Samuel and others to win this football game. So Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. I mean, I'm looking at George Kittle as one of the best tight ends to play this game right now is George Kittle. So look for him early and often. If you can get it to George Kittle, that is a mismatch, but you also have to run the football with Christian McCaffrey. I look at this game as who can score touchdowns in the red zone, and the 49ers seem to be the better team as they win the football game. Carolina versus Seattle. Seattle is a 3.5-point favorite. The Panthers defense may have their hands full this week. Geno Smith, the quarterback of Seattle, can throw the football and run it too. You have to have a spy if you're the Carolina Panthers defense, so he can't get outside the pocket. If he runs, those are for first downs or longer. Now, if I look at the Carolina offense, their quarterback is Sam Darnold, who has to be smart with the football. He cannot turn the ball over. I look at this game as which team can keep drives going. I think third downs and special teams are going to be key in this football game. And if I look at those, I think Seattle has the Carolina Panthers beat. So if I look at special teams again and third down conversions, I have to go Seattle. They win this football game. Philadelphia versus the New York Giants. Philadelphia is a 7-point favorite. For the Giants, they can run the football with Saquon Barkley. Now, I don't know if he's going to play because he has an injury, but even so, you have to run the football. This will help take the pressure off of quarterback Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, though, when he has time, he has to find his open receiver. Can't have turnovers because turnovers will kill you. Also control the clock and don't allow the Philadelphia Eagles offense back on the field. Keep drives alive. If I look at Philadelphia, quarterback Jalen Hurts and their running backs all run the football, so they don't rely on one guy to run the football effectively. They go on long drives, which will tire out the Giants' defense. The Eagles quarterback, Jalen Hurts, can throw the football, and he will look for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So if you're the Giants, have coverage on these guys. If you don't, it won't be much of a game, but even so, I am picking Philadelphia to win this game big. My picks again, Miami versus the Chargers, LA Chargers. New York Jets versus the Buffalo Bills, Buffalo. Tampa Bay versus San Francisco, San Francisco. Carolina versus Seattle, I'm going for Seattle. Philadelphia versus the New York Giants, I'm going for Philadelphia. I'm Jordan Long. Thank you for watching Under Review. Please subscribe to the Sideline Sports YouTube channel because we have shows every single day. Of course, read my blog that I write Mondays through Thursdays with podcasts on Fridays at sports-scoop.com. This has been a Sideline Sports production.